Dr. Melonie Boone, and welcome to Moments with Melonie. It's been a while since I have made my last video. A lot has gone on, a lot to unpack, but I wanted to come back on here and really like the topic for today, which aligns very well with my last few months, I'd say the last 6 months, is around the secret to staying motivated when you feel like giving up. And I think a lot of us have found ourselves in that position. And so, as many of you know, I took a job and relocated to Rhode Island back in September of last year. So it's been almost a year since we've moved. In that time, I took on a role which I would call kind of like my dream role and the role that I've been aspiring to my entire career. But I became Chief Operating Officer for a local food manufacturer here. We make ready-to-use therapeutic foods that save malnourished children, from around the world. I really was taken by the mission of the organization, the founder's vision, the opportunities for growth. There's so many different reasons. The opportunity to move the family and really just start a new adventure for my husband and my two children and myself. And so things have been really well at the job, but in the last 6 months, you can read all about it. I won't go into the political pieces of it, but there were some impacts to the business that really left us at a point where, it was all about survival. And a company that has such a meaningful mission that's so important to so many people around the world, to the people who work here, to the founder, to myself, to our leadership team. It was just a real challenging few months when you face the possibility that the business was not going to survive the changes that happened through funding and different aspects of it. And so for me, it was more than just that. I've grappled with so many different things. It was like, the potential to lose this job that I've always dreamed of having, this mission dying, which was very, very emotional for me. The thought that every box that we produce literally saves a life, and those lines were shut down, or we reduced our production. It was just really, really an emotional time for me. And then just like really personally, it was the first time in my life that I've only had one job. And I know that doesn't sound it may sound weird, but one of the things that I faced as we were going through these challenges that weighed on me emotionally is, last year when I talked to my husband about taking this job, he was 100% supportive. He closed his cigar shop. We packed things up. I let go of my consulting. I stopped coaching. I stopped teaching, like just all of these side jobs that I used to keep so that I never was dependent on one source of income, and my husband was able to also contribute, were all gone. And so in the midst of watching like the business around me that I have grown to love since I started consulting there last year in March, to potentially not survive, it was also looking at like how am I going to care for my family and my husband who trusted me to move here to Rhode Island, and we are going to reopen his cigar shop and all of those great things, but it takes time. And so when you talk about like staying motivated, there were so many periods during that last few months that I really thought like, oh, like I really messed up. Did I make the wrong decision? I have a voice in my head. I know there's a lot of information about negative self-talk, which I can go into, but my mind will take me from happy to homeless, like in a matter of seconds, and you begin to like spiral, and this is where you start to feel like giving up or feel like, I made a big mistake. There were just a whole bunch of emotions, and then couple that with like some of the ways I showed up at work weren't my best, right? When you're dealing with the emotion of what we do at work and you're dealing with the emotion of like, what the hell did I just do? not even 6 months after leaving a pretty comfortable situation and a great job for this opportunity, and it all might be falling apart. And literally, I felt like it was all like crumbling around me. And so, as I reflected one day, I started thinking, like, what am I going to do? And so here's what I typically do in those situations. I will go from panic to despair, to what the hell am I going to do? And I have always been a planner. And so, when you think about the secret to staying motivated, the secret is there is no secret, right? Like, it takes a lot of will, a lot of great people surrounding you. I realized that I took this opportunity because I wanted to invest in myself. I believed in myself. My husband believed in me. Obviously, I got the job, so I had to remind myself that there are many reasons why, I am in this situation. And I had to take like a two-staged approach, right? I had to fix how I was showing up at work. I think that's really important, especially when people are looking to you to be the one that rallies and to get them through like really tough times. So I did have to correct like just not letting those concerns, fears, like feed into how I was leading the team, how we were making decisions, and then like again, like how I was showing up for not only the founder who I report to, but also for my team. Because at the end of the day, like I kept saying, like our mission is too big to fail. And so working together, like how can we make it through this? Because I knew that it wasn't going to be this way forever, even though that little voice in my mind was telling me that it was. And then the second thing I chose to do, just kind of like personally, is really reassess, like, what am I capable of? I have been through so many things that have, caused me to have to really just, I don't even know how to explain it, like to pull myself up, to be pulled up. One of the reasons why I didn't do the podcast for a while is because usually when I'm going through these types of situations, I'll still try to do everything, be everything for everybody. And this was the first instance where I said that I was going to sit back and take some time to really take care of me. It actually involved a lot of sleeping, which my body was just like, I'm running full steam ahead all day. And when you get home, like, you need to just take the rest. And thankfully, I have a family here that supports me. And so dinners were still getting done. I say kids, but they're 17 and 23. But, they were still being taken care of. And they were also taking care of me during that time, which was great. And then I also just thought back on how hard times have been in the past for me, and that, we've overcome being like days from being homeless many years ago when we lost our lease and didn't have money or credit to move, and it was just like a nightmare situation. In my earlier years with the kids, like not having enough money, and so not enough money for grocery, and going to bed hungry because I wanted to make sure everyone ate in the house, and like all of these different things. My mom getting cancer and caring for her, and watching what that did to her, and really like just taking away like my best friend and my everything. And so as I was thinking about like all of these different things that really I could have just crawled away and given up, I didn't. And so with this situation too, I told myself like I'm not gonna give up on this either. And so I've been working over the past few months really just to pull myself back, to focus on doing what needed to be done in my job to make sure that we were able to withstand everything that was going on. I changed my focus, my attitude, my responses at work. I got really defensive, and it wasn't defensive against the people. Like I was just defensive because I wanted to fight so hard for the business. I wanted to fight so hard for personal stuff. I wanted to fight so hard to be able to figure out how I would, and my husband and I would really like survive if I didn't have a job and we're in a different state and all of those types of things. But so like when you think about like why we lose motivation, and all of the things over the past few months can definitely push you to losing motivation and to giving up. But studies have shown that motivation will naturally decline over time because the brain adapts to these new habits. And so, this is why we can be super excited. I was super excited when I started my first job, or if you start a new business, or like there are a million different things where you just get really super excited. But then when there's a struggle, when there's a challenge, when there's something pushing back on you, it is hard to maintain that same level of energy. And so what we do is we start to see that, like, instead of looking at things around motivation, and I actually, it was very hard to stay motivated this last few months. But what I did was really looked at what are some of the disciplines and habits that I need to keep so that I can make it through this. So it was a little bit more than like, the rah rah, we can do it type of scenario. I really had to look at what are the things that I need to change about myself, what are the things that I need to change about my situation. Also acknowledging like what are the things that are actually outside of my control, because there's a lot of things, especially in my scenario over the past 6 months, that were truly out of my control. And so I began to focus on that. Also, like with the negative self-talk, and again, I have suffered with this my entire life. I grew to learn that my mother, my sisters, like it's hereditary, I guess. Like it really runs in the family. And so I also had to check my inner voice to say, like, everything that I've done, everything that I've experienced up to this point, I firmly believe was there to prepare me to deal with what I just went through the past few months. And so, some of the things that are really important when you're trying to keep your motivation or develop these new disciplines and habits is to really, and so that is something during the last few months, even on my worst days, I kept going back to the mission of the company, the why, like the reason why I moved here to Rhode Island, the reason why I was willing to kind of change everything and uproot my family. And there's a very strong, strong reason why, because what I do at work is powerful, it's meaningful, and I had to just keep reminding myself of that. And then, like, really, we find that people who connect their goals to a meaningful purpose are more likely to stay committed. And so, like I just said, I really went back to the why. And then I also just had to trust and believe that if things didn't work out, I have always made a way. My husband has always supported me in making a way. And so that also helped to reground me. Another thing I did was I set some tiny yet achievable goals during this period. And it's so funny because I was in, at the same time in tandem, like setting up these goals for work, but then I also had to set up goals for myself personally. Like, how do I set it up where I never feel that vulnerable, like financially? How do I set things up so that I never feel like I won't be able to um, care for my family? Like, how do I deal with, like, um, set it up so I don't feel like I disappointed my husband, because I think this was just a big move for all of us. Part of that was really talking with him about it and being open and honest and listening to his feedback, which sometimes it's very hard for me to listen to feedback, but I wanted to engage him. I reached out to people who I have coached in the past who have gone through similar situations. I connected with a network of executives to just like really, not even just executives, just a network of people to help give me some advice, to help me see things from a different way. And then there's also kind of like this, they call it the 2-minute rule. For me, it depends on what the situation is, but I work really hard to only give myself a certain amount of time to feel that way. So I always say, like, give yourself the time to be in your feelings, and like feel whatever those emotions are, and then you have to find the cutoff point. And for me, the cutoff point is like, when am I going to move to action? And so some people will say when you're struggling with something, commit to doing it for or like commit to those feelings for 2 minutes, for 10 minutes, a week, whatever it is, but just always have a plan on how you're going to come out of those things. And then, like, finally, motivation, it does come and go. It is impacted by our environment. It is impacted by the things that we can't control. As much as we want to feel like we are in control of everything, we are not. And I had to continually remind myself of that. I also had to remind myself that, what I did, the decisions I made, were not a mistake. It's just like a moment in time that was going to be really challenging, but then it is just that. Like, it's just a moment in time. And so when you're looking at, like, how do you stay motivated? How do you push through? Really interesting. I was talking to my daughter because my daughter, she's very, very persistent. And when she wants something, she wants it. And she will not let it go until she gets it. And she is willing to work hard for it. And one thing I told her in a conversation, sometimes persistence means changing the route that you're taking or changing the plan because the plan may not be working. And that's something that, it's funny, as I was talking to her about it, I had to remind myself that, like, I am going to be persistent. I am not going to give up. I will not be motivated 100% of the time, but I'll always make sure I find my way back there. And then I'll always find a plan, or I'll find a way out of whatever my situation is because I've done it in the past. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit, and we also don't give ourselves the grace to just, like, be in the moment, to reflect on it, and then find the way to move past it. So, like, as I close here in this episode of Moments with Melonie, I'm going to say, like, just keep showing up for yourself. Even when it's hard, like, give yourself the grace. Take your naps. Like, I slept so much, I don't even, can't even remember, like, the times that I was awake first to sleep, but, like, that's what my body needed in that moment, and so I listened to that. And I would recommend that you do the same, and just remember that, like, even in the hardest times, like, there are ways out of it. You may not see it in the moment, but just take some time, journal, reach out to friends, reach out to your community, reach out to peers, and just find that place where you're able to talk through these things and come up with, like, what your solution's going to be. And so, again, thank you so much for joining this episode of Moments with Melonie. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share. I am going to be doing these much more frequently now. Again, like, I just needed to give myself the grace and space. But now I'm super happy to be back in front of the camera and sharing with you. You can follow me on Instagram at Melonie Boone PhD. I'm also on LinkedIn. Melonie Boone, I think, is the LinkedIn/Melonie Boone. And I look forward to connecting. Comment, tell us how you work through tough times, how you stay motivated, and then we'll continue to build as a